Before getting started, I would like to say that pattern making is not an exact science. In the demo, it will become apparent why knowing the techniques and methods of the shirt pattern making will help you make a great master pattern. Now, the first part of the video will show you several scenarios that will help you make a great fitting shirt, and part 2 will actually get you into the demo. Now, non-pattern making course members are encouraged to watch the flimsy pattern video, which will help you convert your store-bought or commercial pattern to a hard pattern. There are many types of problems, and what you see in the tutorials will pretty much cover the range. Don't spend too much time trying to be perfect. Know when and why to be perfect. You will see that I don't spend much time trying to get every wrinkle out when pinning or arranging. Leave it for the final shirt. There are good folds and bad folds, which your average customer is not even aware of. The shirt is not something that appears to be painted on the body as you see here. Be aware of how a person stands. If the client comes in crouching and you make him stand up straight to perform your prep for the pattern making, the minute he assumes his old position, you'll be in trouble. The art of fitting comes in the thinking process. Remember that usually for every reaction there is an opposite reaction. Now, the main objective of the first fitting is to get the shirt body to balance. Now, what does this mean? We want to obtain the correct shoulder slope, correct shoulder width, correct body width, which means no bad diagonals, and the correct shirt length. I don't recommend cutting the shirt length at the first fitting. Now, the second fitting may be necessary if you lack the confidence or experience, and will give you the opportunity to fine-tune what will become the final shirt. Watch the video several times till it becomes an automatic thinking process. Now, after the first fitting, we'll show you how to mark, adjust, and prepare for the second fitting if necessary. Now, the question that most future shirt makers ask is, what is the minimum shirt order is required to make it necessary for the fitting process? I would say at least 4 to 6 shirts. Now, there are many shirt makers that will take an order for one shirt. And normally in this situation, most of these shirt makers observe very well because they have a lot of experience and don't want to spend too much time in the making of the shirt. They are aware that basically what comes out here will be the final. Try to avoid being in this situation. These type of customers are normally not your long-time customers. Now, time is money. Remember, if it's a new customer, they don't have an idea of what a good fitting shirt looks like. You will have to educate them and try to get the minimum shirt order. If the customer has come over from another shirt maker, I would advise to get the minimum order. Most likely, they don't like the fit. Now, in this situation, I would definitely do a shirt fitting. If the customer refuses, I would not take the order. Explain what you're going to do and avoid the headaches. Now, finally, remember you're in the 21st century. Buy a digital camera you can afford. Take front, side, and back views for many problems you want to submit and to help you remember your customers while making the pattern. Okay, in this segment, we won't be talking about the actual measurements, but of some of the details that make the difference that you should be aware of when you're taking the measurements. And for example, when you're taking the neck measurement, make sure you take it at the widest part or at the base. Now, I know there are many methods, and you can find a lot of videos on taking measurements on YouTube and on the web. But like I said, this is not really about the specifics. There is a taking measurement video in your pattern making course. Now, whether you use 2 fingers or 3 fingers, it doesn't make a difference. The point is here that if the actual neckline in this example is 17, you know you have to allow for ease. So in this example, I would probably allow a 17 or 3/4. Enough for shrinkage, enough for after washing that it does fit comfortably even after the washings. And that's a very important concept. Now, the other thing you should be aware of is the upper armhole measurement. That's from the crease where it meets the arm on both sides, and you use 1/2 in your drafting. Now, why is that important? Because ultimately, in one of the videos, you'll be shown how to draw the guideline to make your armhole. And when you're drawing your armhole, you don't want it to be inside the armhole area. You want it to be nice, smooth. You don't want it to be out here. You don't want it to be too low. You want to have a good visual of what the actual armhole is about. And so keep that in mind. It's very, very important. And on the back, again, take note of the base of the back neck. And the other key measurement that you'll be confronting is your shoulder. And you should be cognizant of how to take that measurement. Don't pull it. Let it lay on the back. Now, especially weightlifters, they'll have muscle upon muscle. And if you're unsure, make it wider. You can always take it off at the end. And you'll see a little bit of that in the demo on the fitting. So allow yourself for it to drape on the back. Everyone will be different. Some muscles will be just exaggerated. It could lump, but you need that measurement in the back. Very, very important. Again, be aware of your shoulder line. Visually, when you finish your fitting shirt, whether that's looks good on the customer or whether the customer has brought it to your attention that maybe he should bring it down here, you'll learn how to do that in the fitting video. And again, one important measurement, the armhole. I always take this measurement. I know you people who are drafted by scale, it could be 1/6 the total arm sole circumference or 1/2 the chest measurement. There's different formulas for finding out what the side depth height is or what your cap height is. But I always take the measurement just like you see here, underneath the arm and over the shoulder, because if he's square here, you want it to go over those bones. So for example, if I took it here, it came out to 21, my draft might say that that's an 18. And I know visually that I have a better idea of what that actual armhole measurement is. And again, if you have weightlifters, I would take a bicep measurement, even a forearm measurement. So be aware of these little details. Again, as we go here in the video, we'll tell you a little bit more detail. So in the back, again, be very cognizant of the base of the neck, and watch how the shoulder is rounded or straight. If he's got a extreme hump here, you know you'll need more fabric in the back. The front shoulder length, or the front shirt length, should be taken from where the shoulder line meets the neck, and take it down to where the crotch area is. And when you're doing the fitting, leave a little extra. Remember, it's just as easy to cut off a couple inches versus trying to make a whole length because it was short in the beginning. And when you get customers on the wrong side, they're going to look for every opportunity to question. And you don't want to make another muslin. You want to go with the first one and you want to complete it. Now, when you're taking the measurement on the waist, this is a standard form, but if you get a man that has a tremendous belly and the belly normally falls below the actual waist, you would take it at that area. And normally when you have a person like that, their waist is always bigger than the hip measurement. So be aware of that. Now on the back, take the shirt back length from where at the center back, where it meets the base of the neck. And again, you would take it just below the buttocks. Again, if you're unsure, allow a few extra inches, because again, you don't want to cut another length. You don't want to get the customer in a bad mood. So be cognizant of that, and you'll never have a problem. Normally, the back length is longer than the front, and that's because of the buttocks. It could be 1 or 2 inches longer than the actual front measurement. Again, that'll be a preference that the customer will want. They'll always hear, well, it keeps coming out of my pants. So most likely, if it's coming out of his pants, especially in the back, one cause could be that the shirt back length is too long, as you'll see in one of the videos. And they'll show you a correction for that. So that's one thing they won't be complaining about. And if they've had a bad shirt maker, that's exactly what's going to happen. If it's too long, all this puffiness will be coming out of his belt line. Remember that when you're doing the video, ultimately you want to tuck it in to avoid that problem, to make sure it doesn't happen to you. And that's basically what we have. If you have any questions as far as details about measuring, again, I think probably one of the most important parts is this upper chest measurement. And that's because we'll be designing the actual armhole that fits around this arm perfectly. And that's key, because if you don't have the right measurement, or if you don't bring it in at the right point, you'll have all this extra fabric, and a lot of times what it does is it comes over onto the sleeve and creates the sleeve to looking like it's puffy. And you want a nice smooth shirt. Okay, in this segment I'd like to talk a little bit about yoke balance. And in the previous segment we spoke and we showed you how the neckline of the yoke should match the neckline of the body. If it doesn't, if it comes down too much, it comes out, it's going to distort everything. So make sure you have a balance. Now I know when you were drafting your patterns, you put your front, your yoke, and your back together, and you trued the armhole and you trued the neckline, and you're assuming that everything was right. But I'm going to show you something here that most people aren't aware of. And in this particular case, this was drafted off the pattern, and we put the pattern on the table, and it looked beautiful in the neckline. But you can see that the neckline is really above the base of the actual neck base, and that's going to cause a problem. So, and I'm going to show you here. I'm going to put one of the patterns on it. What happens is when you put your front, you sew it. You don't even realize, and you go ahead and sew it. What happens is already the neckline is up high on the neck, and the neck's not going. It's not going to fit. It's going to be a different measurement altogether, and it's going to distort it. As you can see here, the buttons are offline, and when I try to put it back online, it's going to cause other problems. So you have to make sure that this neckline here is, and I'm going to fold it under to show you. You go cut it and make sure that it's right where it should be, so that when you do sew the pattern on there, it lays perfectly in the area that it should be. And that's something to be aware of, because this can cause diagonals in the shoulder area, and you'll be pulling your hair out trying to figure out what you did wrong, along with maybe the neck being too deep in the back. And it also could be the actual slope. You're off on the slope. The slope you can adjust in the fitting. But I would be aware of that. So when you're doing the fitting, I would suggest you do the fitting without the sleeves, and you can see how it lays on the customer. If, again, I'll put it back, if it's up high, in this case here, I would trim it right on the customer. Forget about the length of the shoulder. You can adjust that. This is just a muslin. So once you get this correct, you can recut another one, and all you're cutting is the yoke. So again, make sure that they lay on the base. So just get your scissors and just cut it right along there, and make sure you have a nice smooth fit on there. Another thing before I forget, when you're doing your muslin, put your buttons and buttonholes on it. It doesn't affect your fitting whatsoever. And you really get a true reading of what you're doing in the fitting. So go ahead and finish your plackets, left and right side, and go from there. So remember, watch the slope. You can see it's off on the baseline, it's too high. So you have to bring it down to the actual area and create a nice smooth line. And that's going to create a balanced yoke. That's going to make the fronts, because everything hangs from the yoke. So if your yoke is hanging balanced, your fronts are going to hang balanced, and you're not going to get all this pulling on either side. Okay, in this segment, we'll be working on the body measurements, nothing but the body measurements. Remember, there are 4 seams. There's 2 fronts, and in reality there are 2 backs, even though it's cut on the center back. So, for example, if you add 1/4 inch to the side seams, that's 4 times 1/4, or 1 inch. If you add 1/2 inch, that's 4 times 1/2, or 2 inches. Now, you can vary if you want to add 1/4 only to the hip, and maybe 1/2, or you want to take 1/2 or add 1/2, you can do any combination of. But to start with, what I normally do is I trace around the pattern. Now, if you weren't going to work on the armhole, or you could actually add on to it right on the paper. The only thing I find that creates a problem here, if you don't get exactly the same shape on the front as on the back, it tends to make the sewing a little different. So I always prefer the pivot method. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to trace around it, and I'll be using a Sharpie so you can see it on camera. Now this would be your first step. Trace completely around. Now I'm using the Sharpie so the lines will appear a little thicker. And we'll get on top here. And the neckline. And a little more. going to check it to make sure everything is going right. And if you can see, I have my fold and I have my center front. In this case, example, we won't be using those two. We'll be mainly concerned with the side seams. Now, I'm going to move it forward a little bit just so you can see the line that I just drew. Now, I'm going to make some marks here. I'm going to take a quarter on the side because I want 1 inch reduction in the hip. So I'm going to mark a line here that's a quarter. And I want more in the waist area, so I'm going to mark 3/8. So that's going to be 1.5 inches total because there's 4 seams. So I'll mark 3/8. And in the chest, I'm going to let out a quarter in the chest, which is going to give me 1 inch more in the chest. And so if you're, in this case, if you're letting it out, you would be on this side of the outline, and if you're taking it in, you would be inside the outline. Okay? And what we're going to do now is we're going to grab our pin, and I always mark my seam allowances. So what we got here now is you put it right back where you originally traced it. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it right where the shoulder meets the armhole seam. And what we're going to do is we're going to pivot it to that first mark. We're letting it, we're increasing by 1 inch on the chest area. And now what you do is you redraw your armhole. This way you ensure that the armhole is not going to change. And just about 3/8 of a ½ inch on the side. Then what you'll do is you'll go ahead and move your pin to the ½ inch mark where it meets the armhole on the side seam. And you'll pivot in, because remember we're taking it in on the waist. So I'm going to make that in red just so you can see it. So there it is, and I'll blend it right into the chest area. And also I'm taking, I'll move it here to the ½ inch seam on the side seam, and I'll pivot to that 1/4 inch on the hip area. And I'll blend it back into the waist. And what you need to do too is you need to blend it back in here and blend it back into the original hem. And so there you go. You have originally, let me mark this one here to the chest. So I'm going to remove it now just so you can see it. So what we did is we made the hip 1 inch smaller. We took in the waist by 3/8, and we let out the chest by 1 inch. And this is the original, so I won't need that. So my new cut line will be the new line that I pivoted. It'll go back in, narrower in the waist, and narrower in the hip area. And you would do the same on the back pattern, because in this example, there's no alteration to the shoulder length or the armhole, so it's pretty cut and dry. Now when you put your back onto this by using the same procedure, these seams are going to be nice and smooth. That's why I do the pivot method on it. Now you could, like I said, you could have just added on to the extra paper and just blended and cut it. You could do it, no problem on that. But this is just another method that will be used. In the next example, what I'm going to show you is how to shorten or increase the shoulder length. Okay, in this segment we'll be talking about making our shoulder width wider. So in this example, we're going to let it out or widen it by ½ inch. That's a ½ inch on each side, so that means we're going to have 1 inch wider. We're going from an 18 to a 19. Now, a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, since we're going to make the length wider on the front, we're going to have to make the yoke wider also for them to match up. And also, because the yoke is wider here, the back's going to be wider. It's going to be a wider length down here too. So we're going to have to change the bottom of the yoke that attaches to the back shirt, and also widen the back shirt, and also widen the back yoke shoulder seam. So what we do here is we start out by tracing completely around it. And I've already done that so we don't waste any time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend, or I'm going to measure out a ½ inch, and I'm going to mark it with red so you can see it. So I'm going to come out half. push pin again. I've come out a 1/2 inch, extended it. Now, if you wanted to make it smaller, I'm going to mark it the other way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it 1/2 inch in. So in other words, 17 on this particular example. And I'll show you the process for both. So again, you've traced it around, you put it back the way it was originally. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to move it to the 1/2 inch extension. You're going to just push it. Make sure everything's lined up on the straight there. And then what you'll do is you'll mark off obviously the length and about 1/2 inch down the side of the armhole. And what you'll do also is you will now pivot to the original side seam area and redraw the armhole. This ensures even though you change the length, you don't have to mess with the armhole. The armhole is going to be the same. Now what you'll do is you'll come to the 1/2 inch on the side seam where it meets the armhole, and you'll pivot directly back to where it was. And again, you'll retrace it. It'll be pretty close to what it was originally. Now the only thing you have to concern with is the bottom of the hem, and make sure that that blends back into the original hem. Now I'm going to remove it. Well, let's do it the opposite. Let's put it back to original, and let's make it smaller. So remember, I went in 1/2 inch, so what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to push it on that line and make it smaller by 1/2 inch, which means a total of 1 inch. I'm going to put it again where it meets the armhole at the shoulder, and I'm going to pivot it to the original, and I'll redraw the armhole. And about 1/2 inch on the side here. Then I'll come, move my pen, move it to the 1/2 inch mark again on the side seam, and pivot back to the original, because I didn't change anything in the body. And so there again, I'm going to give you a close-up view of what I've done. And you can see that I came in half, pivoted to the new line, the same on the blue. Or the red I came out and pivoted to. So in this case here, you haven't made any changes to the body. The only changes you've made to is the shoulder. Now, what's happened at the shoulder is it's changed. So the length is different. So we have to make the length so it fits the longer one. And we'll show you that in the next segment. Okay, we've made the length on the front pattern a 1/2 inch longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend it 1/2 inch on the shoulder also. And I'm just going to go ahead and extend the shoulder by 1/2 inch. And I'm going to extend the bottom of the yoke all the way down across. And what I'll do is I will square up a line from where that last point is, and just square up. Now it doesn't mean a lot to you now, but you'll see when we true everything. At this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it out. Now we've increased it 1/2 inch. If you were shorting it, you go the other way, 1/2 inch and square down. So again, I'm going to cut it out. And I'm going to go ahead and use my needle wheel and create some perforation so I can bend it easier. Now I'm going to bring my front back, as you know. So I'm going to go ahead and bend it and fold it at the seam allowances and line it up. And again, I'm making it bigger in this case. And you can see why I did what I did, so it can get a good, and I'm going to fold the bottom just so you can get a better idea of what we're doing here. So again, and I'm going to put the weight there. And at this point here, what I would do is I would go ahead and, you got to tweak your curve a little bit. I would tweak it. Always make a nice smooth curve. And I will trim it and shape it so the neckline is perfect. So at this point here, we have a good shoulder distance with a little extra. And what I'm going to do is grab the back, and I'm going to fold the back. And I'll show you what happens. Now the back is short. And so what you have to do with the back is you have to trace around it under fresh paper, extend it. I would extend it about an inch, and I'm going to pause and do that. Okay, continuing with the back pattern, what I did is I traced completely around it. And I included my seam allowances at the top where it attaches to the bottom of the yoke. Now, we increased it 1/2 inch on the yoke and the front, so we're going to do the same on the back. I would mark off a 1/2 inch and extend that line. And also from this original line, I'd come over an inch just to give yourself some extra paper just as a guideline. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the pattern back on like it originally was, and we're going to move it to that new 1/2 inch length or width. And at the 1/2 inch mark, seeing where it meets the bottom or top of the shirt, back shirt, and the armhole, we'll pivot to the original and go ahead and recreate or keep our same armhole shape and length, and about 1/2 inch on the side. Then I'll go to the side seam at the 1/2 inch mark and pivot back to the original and create a new hem. So at this point here, I've created my 1/2 inch mark. At this point, what I'll do is I get my needle wheel and I'll perforate the seam there all the way through. And I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to cut the needle line out. Remember, we haven't done anything to the bottom. We cut the same original hem. I cut the top. Straight ahead. And we cut the center back. And up here, I'll just go straight ahead. I'll just usually leave myself a few inches at the top. And what I'll do is I'll bring my front pattern back, and I'll go ahead and put my yoke back on the seam line. Remember, they're all folded. I'll put my weight there. And this is the art of truing again, because remember, every time you change these, you put all three pieces together, and I'll fold it again. And I'll walk it. And usually I fold it back, so it doesn't have a lot of length. I don't need the bottom of it, so I'm going to go ahead and make the seam pretty smooth and so. And then I'll walk it, just as if you were stitching it. And then you'll put a weight on it. And at this point you'll true just like you did on the original. Now here's the increase in the length. 1 inch in this case here, so I'm going to go ahead and extend that. And I'm going to go ahead and blend the back into this. And now what we'll do is we'll cut right along that line. On the new line, the armholes will stay the same. We have the correct width on the yoke and the correct width on the back shirt. And that's how simple it is. Okay, in this segment we'll be talking about increasing or decreasing the neckline, and this is all based on your drafting. Now, when you initially drafting, you had all the lines, and I want to give you a close-up just so you can review what went on initially. So remember, you drew your lines at right angles, and you created your size. Now, in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to make it smaller. And the process will work for making it bigger. But when you're making it smaller, we need to patch a piece of paper in this area here because we obviously need work. So what you could either do is you can use either masking tape or you can trace all the way around it. Like you could do that, okay. And what you could do is you could turn it over, and you could put a piece temporarily down there, just so it doesn't come loose. And again, you'll go ahead and put that piece in there, or you can use the glue stick, and you can glue on the reverse side and get it nice and stiff all the way down, even slightly toward the armhole. So that would be a key. Or you could trace completely around it and completely around on a fresh piece of paper, and then cut it out, everything on the sides, the top, except when you get to this area, leave it all solid. So in other words, you would come in here and you could cut around it and just leave this solid here. And then you'll make the corrections as I'm going to show you momentarily. On the yoke, the same way, again, we have our lines at right angles as we drafted initially. And again, you could either attach a piece of paper in there, glue it, or use masking tape, however you want to do it. Or you could trace around it like I did in this example, trace completely around it. And what I mean by trace around it and then leave a segment in the area that you're working. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and cut it and show you exactly, and this would work for the front also, just to show you. And what you would do is, in this area here, you would leave all of this in this area here. And then what you would do is you would perforate your seams all the way around, top and bottom, and you'll be ready to do the part that's coming up now. So in this case, we've decided that we're going to make it smaller. What you do to one end, you do to the other, always. So remember initially when you were drafting your measurements, you came out with 32.2. The back had to be 32.2. And when you had your measurements for the neckline, this part here, if it came out to 8.2, the back had to be 8.2. And so what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So in this case here, we're going to make it smaller. Now I'm going to exaggerate so you can see it better on camera. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to make it a 1/4 inch smaller. So I'm going to draw my line so you can see it now. That's toward the center front. And I'm going to do the same thing on the back. I'm going to make it a 1/4 inch smaller. Now you'll continue this. Now I did a 1/4. You could go in increments of 1/8 or 3/16. Don't go too fast because you have to true the neck as you're going. So what I'm going to do in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and perforate it so I can make it bend all the way through. And I'm going to go ahead and bend it. And I'll go ahead and line it up on there. And you can see the original neckline. Now, here's the new one. So the new one is going to be here. So I'm going to blend it from this new line, and I'm going to blend it back into the bottom. Okay. And I'm going to do the same on the new line on the front. Start where it crosses the shoulder. So again, we have a new line here. So again, we're going to go ahead and make it smaller. So we're going to go ahead and blend it from here. and blend it in like that. So now, when you put them together, you need to make sure that it's completely true, and make sure that the new line you made is blending into the blue line at the back. Make sure it's a nice smooth line for sewing purposes. And I'm going to leave it right there. And what you'll do next is you put your seam allowances. Now remember, we have the blue line, so you put your seam allowances in there. Remember, we're going in toward the center back and the center front. Make sure you have a nice smooth line. Now, obviously this will be in pencil and you can erase, so you don't have a lot of lines like I do. What you will do now is you will measure from center front on the edge of the tape, and measure on that new line that you created, and you go around slowly and accurately, and when you get to the center back you read your number. And remember, this is only 1/2, so you have to double it. If it's not small enough, then what you would do is you would come in, let's go 1/8. So you'll make 1/8. And remember, on the back you need to go 1/8 also. And again, you will blend that into the center back. And the front, the new line you just drew, you would blend that into the front. Again, you'd put them together and create your new size. Now, if you want it bigger, you'll start out by going toward the armhole. Again, draw your lines, start off with 1/4, first round, then increments of 1/8 or 3/16 until you get the size that you need. Now, when you're getting bigger, there's a couple of things that are happening. Either the guy is, he's got some weight on him. He's maybe small in stature, but a very big neck, 20, 21. So again, it's going to depend on how long his neck is, whether you're going to drop it. If he's tall, if he's 6'5", I may drop it here and blend into the new line that I did. So if this was the extension to make it bigger, I would drop it 1/4 here to start with and blend it into that line. And again, you do the same on the back, and you work toward your number. Don't be impatient. Don't try to take too much at one time. Your objective is to get a nice smooth curve and get the right size. That's your objective. And then once you cut it out, you can either put it onto a fresh piece of paper, or you can use, this one being bad, yours would be in pencil, so you could erase a lot of these lines. And that's how you make the neckline. In the next segment, what we're going to do is what happens when you have to move the neckline on the back forward. So we'll pause and we'll get into that. Okay, in this segment, we've put the muslin on the individual, and we found that the collar is standing away from the neckline at the back, and we have to increase the neck height. In other words, we have to bring it up here a little bit. There again, it's trial. You know, that's what a fitting is all about. So, in our case, I'm going to bring it up 1/2. The neck size is still going to be the same. So if it's 16 now, in the way it is now, and we have to obviously bring it up a 1/2 inch, we're going to have to lower it in the front because it's going to come forward. So what I normally do is you can either put a patch piece of paper in there, or you can trace it around like I did in this segment here. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and add a 1/2 inch, just like you see here. And then I would go ahead and blend it from that neck point up into here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out at this point here. So I'll cut it out. And if you had a lower, it would be the reverse. So normally what I do is I always leave extra paper in the neckline, just like you see here. And I will go ahead and perforate the seam so I can fold it. Because ultimately what I'm going to do is I'm going to true all the pieces. I'm going to true my front, my back, and my yoke. So I always put my seam allowances in there. And I'll go ahead and put it in here. And fold it. And I'll go ahead and put it like it originally was. And I'll put my weight on it. Now, I came up a half. So I'm going to have to blend that into the front. And it's going to make it, and I'm losing half, so it's smaller. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it probably 3/8 to start with again. And I'll make a mark there. And I'll square a line just so I have a guide. Remember, I have to come up with the same size. If it was 16 to start with, I lost a little bit here, so I have to make it 16. Again, what I'm doing now is I'm going to blend it. Into that new line. Remember, you always want a nice smooth line for good sewing. And then again, what you would do is you would put your seam allowances. I'm going to put them in blue so you can see. Now, it's kind of confusing because I have some previous marks here, but I think you get the idea. And so you have your new mark. And again, from center front, I would measure on the seam all the way to the center back and make sure you have the same measurement. If not, drop it a little bit more in the front, another 1/8 or 1/4. Go ahead and reshape it, and again, everything should work out fine. So just take it slow, have patience with it, and that's how you create an increase in the back neckline. Depends on the individual how he's sloped. You'll truly see this when you're doing the fitting, when the actual muslin is on the body. I'd suggest that when you do the muslin, do not put a collar on it, nor sleeves. What you want is you want the body based. You want the body to be balanced before you start working on your sleeves and your neckline. And this way you can tell and you can see up front, because ultimately what's going to happen is this shirt has to close nice and smooth in the front without any pulling. And in this particular case, because it was too low in the back, when the individual buttoned the collar, it pulled everything forward, causing wrinkles. And so that was one of the cases. Now, the wrinkles may be caused by another attribute, and that would be the slope of the shoulder. And this you'll all see in the fitting. When we actually get to the fitting demo, a live demo, a lot of this alteration will make sense to you. But this is the procedure of altering the pattern. Okay, in this tutorial, this segment here, this is basically the same body as the previous one we worked on, except the shoulder slope is set for a square shoulder. You can see that it's just sticking out basically like a wing. And this form has a 2-inch shoulder drop, and this is probably 1 inch. And so what I would suggest is, to give you an idea of how we would correct this, I would pin it for about 1 inch on the edge there. And when I put my measuring tape to it at the table, I'll show you exactly how I'm going to remove it from the yoke and the front to give us the correct slope. Okay, this is part of the demo for the total fitting, but we had a segment there where we had square shoulders and it sort of created a wing. And I'm not getting into the body because that's covered in the full demo, but this is just the application to the shoulder, and we had designated that it probably was about 1.5 inches or so. So I marked it, and I'm going to go ahead and take the pin out just to show you the marks. And at this point what I did, I'm going to readjust it so I can show you on camera what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up the shoulder, and you do it on both sides obviously. But, so what you'll do now is go ahead and open it up. Okay. Now again, with water soluble, what I would do is I would mark the original seam allowance and do it just like I'm showing you here. Remember, we had 1 inch on the original fitting. Okay, and I marked the back one also. The back being the yoke. Okay, and now what I'll do is I'll take it apart. Now, you have a choice. Now you would do, you would mark one side and then superimpose them, just like I showed you on the side seams and the shoulder. But I'm only going to do one side in this demo here. So we knew we're about 1.5 inches, and we need to adjust the yoke down. So you're going to have to decide whether you want to take, let's say I want to drop the, say 3/4, or say 1 inch. I want to drop in 1 inch. I want to drop it 1 inch on the front, and then mark it to the original, and then take 3/4, or I'll take half on the back. So I'm going to drop it half on the back. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a combination. You're going to do 3/4 and 3/4. I tend to take less on the front, and then to that, what you would do is you would add your seam allowances. Okay. And now, what you would do is you put your two fronts together again, and of course you have to take your body apart. Now, one you're using as a template, you're going to superimpose it. I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to do. Again, put it on top, and put it so you can see it pretty well what I'm doing. Anytime, always use one side as a template for the other. And this is why you can see that from 1 inch slope it was almost straight with the shoulder. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to readjust it. Okay. And now you have a normal shoulder. It went back to about a 2.5, close to 3. And obviously you sew it back to your yokes. Now the yokes, the same way. Since you marked it on there, you have to superimpose all pieces, which is not a big problem here. I can pretty well see where it's at on the underneath part, but you would disassemble it from the back. And there's where I dropped it, and there's the seam allowance. And I would put all 4 pieces together. In this case here, I would open up the seams and go ahead and put them and make sure you line everything, superimpose everything, and go ahead and cut it. There it is. So the backs have been, the slope has been dropped on the back and the front. Now the other option would have been, you could have opened it up on the customer and taken it. The only thing is the pieces tend to fall down when you're trying to adjust. There's nothing holding it. And so basically I can just tell by doing what you've seen on camera. And what we'll do is we'll put it on back on the camera again. And in trim I'll go ahead and do the side seams off camera. And we'll show you how this extreme square shoulder became a standard. Okay, in this segment we'll be talking about the square shoulder. This is just a continuance for the square shoulder. We had an extreme square shoulder and we took off about 1.5 inches. And now that we put it on the back, again, we didn't do anything else to the body. We're just talking about the square shoulder. But it looks like, even though I took about 1.5 inches, it looks like I still need a little bit more. So this is what you would do. And it looks like about 1/2 inch more. I didn't quite take enough. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it. and then I'll show you what's going on here. So. And you can tell now it's laying down nice and smooth. So we need about another 1/2 inch. And it looks like I don't have to go really all the way into, I can do it about to here, so I can blend it into about this area here, and that should keep the neck area smooth, and then give us a nice flat yoke area. So that's how you solve that problem. Again, I didn't do anything. You can see there's still a lot of back length, and again you would just fold that out, lift it till it comes out and it's nice and smooth. Body's still huge. Again, you'll go back to your full demo and all this will be explained, but mainly it was a square shoulder. What do you do when you have a wing or high square shoulder? This is what you do, you pin it out. And I need another 1/2, so I'm going to take that out. Okay, in this tutorial we'll be talking about the diagonal wrinkles that one gets on the front, right in through here. And what we're going to do is we're going to raise this front until these diagonal wrinkles disappear. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, we have to open it up. Now you can do this right on the customer, but normally what I do is I start ripping it. I use my knife, and normally it's a muslin, so I can normally rip it, but for you beginners, I'll go ahead and do it the old-fashioned way, just ripping it on here. And be careful. And so we've got it apart now. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and raise the front until we make those wrinkles disappear. Now make sure the seam allowances are equal, in other words the edges to edges, because you don't want one more than the other. You're going to put it out of balance. Now I keep saying that the methods are interrelated. Now when you do this, you may find that your slope was not taken up enough, so you may have to go back and raise the shoulder slope or lower it. So, but anyway, what I'm doing here is I'm raising the front, and I'll start to pin it right on the seam allowance, and you'll go all the way down. Now at this time, it's a good time to be adjusting your width of your body. You put 1 inch seam allowances, but maybe you had to let it out to a 1/2 inch instead of 1 inch because you just miscalculated. So this is the time where you'll be doing that. And when we go to the table, I'll show you how to make these changes to the muslin and to your pattern. So I find that I'm going to need a little bit more in the hip area, so I'm going to go down to about 1/4 inch. All the way down. And you'll find that your back pattern will be longer than your front. And so you'll make the adjustments. Remember, this is just a muslin. And so you can make changes onto your pattern. So you can see the difference. Now normally what I do is I mark where the new change was. You can see here, I'll mark it so you can see it on the camera. And I'll mark the other side because I need to blend this into the armhole. And when I get it on the table, I'll make it the size I want, 21, 22, whatever that size may be. So again, if you look at it, those wrinkles, you may have to raise it a little bit more. So in this case here, I think I will raise it just a tad more. And again, make sure you have the right ease in the chest. And that's basically what happens. Now, as far as the back, remember when we adjusted the shoulder slope? I said that sometimes the back is very long. Well, sometimes, this is what's happened. When I corrected it up here, this became pretty smooth. Now, I haven't done the other side, so it's a little wobbly in here, but when you adjust both sides the same way as this one here, you'll lift all those wrinkles out. Now again, you can see up here, I may have to go back and adjust the shoulder slope. And that's how you do it. So it's kind of a back and forth process. Now, when you have the customer, you can do all this, and you may have them wait. Tell them you're going to have like a 1-hour fitting. And since this is a muslin and you have extremely long stitching, you can pretty well rip it real quick. You can make changes and put it back on the customer to make sure you have everything correct. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the next tutorial, and we're going to make the changes on the muslin and on the pattern. Okay, in this segment, we had a situation in which the diagonal wrinkles were running from the placket to the side seam. And as I showed you, I lifted the front on to the back. And I'm going to make it a little darker. I'm going to make it in red where the original was. That's the back. And I lifted the front onto the back. So I'm just going to continue that line right where it's at. And what I'm going to do now in this particular case is I'm going to mark your side seams while you're at it, where the new side seam would be. Whatever it turned out to be in your case here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pins out. And I'm going to lay it flat just so you can see what's happened. Now, in this particular case, this is where the original, this is where the new line was lifted to. So what we need to do is we need to blend it into the armhole. We need to get it back into the original. This is exactly how you would do it. You'd blend it into there. Now, what you would do is you would put both fronts together, cut them both at the same. And I don't have my other side disassembled, so let me take a second here and disassemble that. And I'll show you exactly so we don't have any confusion here. Okay, so you get the one that you just marked. You'll have fronts to fronts. And of course you want to make it so that the marking will be on top. And there it is. And I'm going to turn it again so you get a better view. So here's the front marking that I reshaped here. And what you'll do is you'll recut it. Into the armhole. And now the diagonal wrinkles have been removed and you lift it. Now, one thing that's happened here is your seam allowances on the back are going to be too long. So I'm going to go ahead and put them together and you'll see here. So this is a muslin. And you'll see that when you put it on there, you see that the back is too long. At this point I wouldn't be concerned with it because it's a muslin. What you're going to do now, you have a choice. You can either cut the back to match the side seam, or when you adjust the pattern, add the 1 inch back onto the fronts and make them the same as the back, and you can decide on that. So in this particular case, just for the sake of showing, what I would do is I would just reshape it back into there. Now the side seams are the same.